So what is what's the audit scope? Call it extent, call it rigor of a typical 800-171 review that's done by the DIBCAC.
So I'm going to keep it in pretty broad general terms. A coordination for an assessment starts anywhere from 30 to 45 days prior to the assessment. The associated contracting officer will reach out to the intended company and ask to participate in an assessment with DCMA. Once the company says yes, there will be some meetings to talk about preparations, the types of documents, sort of the administrative coordination prior to the actual event. It's one of the key things to point out with the assessment. We understand that system security plans, one of the key elements of an assessment, can be very sensitive. So up prior to the COVID-19 impacts that we're currently facing, we can address that separately if you'd like. We were very careful not to ask companies to send SSPs to us. We would actually ask that those be made available to us when our assessors showed up on site. The week of the assessment typically starts on a Monday. The assessment takes place by starting with an in-brief, followed by a careful document review. So for those companies that have not been through a DIBCAC assessment or one with the other services and agencies following the same methodology, I want to let you know, if you give us documentation, we will review your documentation, which does come in handy when you're not sure where the policy may be, because our guys will help you find it. But at the end of the day, at the end of that first day, that first day is all about preparation. The real assessment begins on the Tuesday morning. Typically, it's scheduled to go through Friday. The length of the assessment really depends on how well the company is prepared, how well they know how to touch all the things that need to be touched, and have the personnel available to demonstrate the things that have to be demonstrated. We've seen assessments go as fast as 1.5 days. We've seen them take the full week to get it done. The weekend generally ends with an out brief. During the out brief, there are no surprises. It's a complete open kimono sort of assessment. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that each day there's a hot wash between the assessors and the company to ensure, answer any questions, look for any do outs that may be, part of the assessment, of missing document, missing artifact, something that's needed to demonstrate that a requirement is being met. So there's no mystery involved in the entire process. It's very transparent. It's very collegial. It's not intended to be a gotcha. In fact, we prefer it if companies are fully compliant with the things they're supposed to be compliant with. We're not there to rain on anybody's parade and tell anybody that they're not, doing good things for the nation.
Right.
Our intent is to ensure that the company's doing the things that it's supposed to do. At the end of the week, there's an out brief that goes over the tentative score, so that that all that is shared very, very directly with the company. And then in the event that it's needed, there's a reclama period. There's just some artifact, some document, some piece of work that was not able to be accomplished during the review, and that can take up to 30 days after the assessment to clear those items. Dot those I's and cross those T's. The final report is shared back to the company approximately 30 to 45 days later. And those scores, once they're settled, get entered into the Supplier Performance Risk System SPRS, a website that's laid out in the Ms. Lord November 19 memo that the government can use to share the scoring information across the Department of Defense.
Gotcha. So in terms of does it, if indeed you've got, let's call it a finding, I don't know what you guys would refer to it as, would there be an expectation that they would produce a POAM to address that any particular issues that you did identify? So
during the conduct of the assessment, we're actually expecting to see the POAMs identified via the company's self-assessment. Mm-hmm. So part of the preparation for an assessment is for the company to perform a self-assessment. Mm-hmm. And in any areas where they believe they have not fully implemented a requirement, they should have a POAM to demonstrate that they're aware of the issue and they understand the scope and the magnitude of what they need to do to get it right.
Right. But if you identify something that they're still doing wrong during your audit, how do they address that? Is that through a POAM?
So it would be through a POAM.
Okay.
But technically at that point, so here's when we get into the DFARZs of an assessment. So under the current DFARS rule, what is required is a system security plan and a POAM for any deficient areas. So if a company has a SSP and actually has POAMs for the things they may not have implemented fully, then they're actually compliant with the DFARS clause. They may not receive full scoring credit, obviously.
Okay, that's how you handle it.
So we adjudicate it there, but every now and then we find where a company just got it wrong. And in that case, that would be a deficiency, and we allow the company to either get the POAM together while we're on site or get it to us during the reclama period. That's usually what happens sometime in that time frame. Any deficient POAMs are identified and put together. In the few cases where that's not been the case, that's when you start getting into what DCMA calls a corrective action request, which is an administrative procedure that a contracting officer notifies the contractor that you're deficient in a particular area and now you got to fix it.